Welcome back to New to Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and today I have a very special guest. One of my friends, Vail DeWan, is on here today. Vail is in Florida, and Vail was at ADP before he was able to break into medical device sales, and I'm really excited to hear his experience there that he can share to everyone, and why he was at ADP, and also just being now breaking in with one of the top medical device companies in the world as an associate rep, and just learning about those job duties as well. So Vail, thank you so much for hopping on today's podcast.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, man. Well, like I said, Vail's in sunny Florida, living the dream right now. But he worked his butt off to get where he's at. And Vail would just like to kind of hear your journey.
Yeah. Going through college, I never thought I'd be in this industry. I did a pre-med program in high school. My parents were both physicians. I just always thought I was on the doctor path. Come senior year or senior year, I kind of realized that wasn't for me. So I was scrambling to find something that would suit me. And first I thought I wanted to do physics because I was doing really well in physics class as a major. And then all my friends were doing business and I was always talking to them about their classes. So I took a lot of business classes and wanted to do something finance related for a while. And then I saw an opening at ADP. My roommate happened to be doing a internship for a payroll company as well. So I had a lot of experience there, just kind of helping him strategize with his sales. So kind of fell in love with it and just jumped right in. I needed a job, to be honest. I needed to start paying the bills.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. So how long were you at ADP?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
So I started as an um, associate like role. It's basically you get a territory, but once you sell a certain amount, you get promoted to a full line district manager. So associate district manager to district manager, and basically just worked my butt off. I was in more of a remote territory, so I had control over everything and just progressed from there.
Love it, man. So at what point did you think, hey, I'm going to look at medical device sales?
Yeah, so I always had an eye towards the medical device sales. It's always something I wanted to get back into hospitals. I wanted to feel like I'm making a difference and help people also have, just be part of something bigger. So after I feel like I went as far as I could go with the payroll sales, as far as learning every day, I wanted to just do something more challenging and more rewarding and have the opportunity for more compensation and just make a bigger impact.
I love that, man. I love that. Yeah. And like I said, guys, the reason I'm really excited to have Vail is because if you guys have reached out to anybody, the number one thing they will say is go work at an ADP, a payroll, a job similar to Vail's. And Vail, I would love to have you just touch on, like it's not easy where you were to get it, because
Yeah.
you have to perform and show your numbers there to get your foot in the door for medical device.
Yeah. So first of all, I wanted to spell because I never saw myself as a natural salesperson. I was always open to new things. So I jumped into it and it scared me a lot. I thought I was just going to be thrown in with something to sell and not knowing what I was doing. But they structure it. It's a lot of work. It's very hard, but they give you just like with medical device sales, they give you the tools you need to succeed. And the only reason you don't succeed is if you don't work. So they're going to give you training. They're going to give you marketing resources. They're going to set you up with a few COIs, but you also have to build your own centers of influence, make your own connections. So as long as you're hustling, like I said, I'm not a natural salesperson. They'll set you up for success. So don't be afraid of that. And touching on the training, just really good training helps you get out of your comfort zone. Helps you get a lot of rejection because you might face that, especially with interviews for medical device sales. So
Yep.
it just helps you come out of your shell and realize your sales style because it's different for everybody, honestly.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And so now you were able to break in as an associate rep with one of the top medical device companies in the world. And can you kind of just tell us about that journey in itself? Maybe how many places you applied, the interview process that you went through to land the job that you currently have.
Yeah, I went through quite a few, maybe like 15 or 20
Yep.
interviews over the course of a year when I decided this is what I wanted to do. The first few kind of caught me off guard because they're a lot more intense than what I was used to. But once you get like your first one, you just got to know you're gonna bomb. Your second one, maybe they start asking the same similar questions. Lean on your recruiter if you have a recruiter, and just kind of get into. You'll just get that experience, and it will come naturally. So then you'll start nailing and getting on the short list or getting up there just because you know what to say, you know how to present yourself. And that's when you really have to go the extra mile and reach out to people, get people on your side. And it just sucks when you put all you have into one job and then you figure out you got second place. I mean, you just got to pick up, start with the next one. That happened to me a few times, but I mean, it's just what you got to do.
I love that, man. I love that you touched on it. Real quick, for everyone listening, if you don't know what a short list is, a short list is when they're looking for a job. They already have a couple candidates that they're gonna look at interviewing first. You made the list of, hey, I liked this guy. A recruiter can help you with that. Or, I got on the short list a couple times by just reaching out to so many people, and they're like, hey, this job's not open yet, but eventually will be. But it's funny that you say that, man, because the podcast right before this was that my mistakes in medical device. I told people I actually went through like 15 or 20 interviews as well. And I told people my first 2, 3 bombed, like exploded,
Mhm.
because like you just don't know what to expect, right? The
Yeah.
questions, it's like, and then I tell people, I kind of explain it like sports. After you've done it 5, 10 times, it's like watching film. You've already seen it, you know what's coming, and you can start preparing for those questions to get you ready for the interview.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of times in your mind, you'll be prepared. You'll have an idea of the way it will go, and then everything you studied and you think will impress them, they just touch on it for a second and then completely just take a 90-degree angle and talk about something else that you thought maybe wouldn't be in the interview process. So in your mind, you thought you were so prepared and that this is the way it was going to go, and they'll take it somewhere else. And sometimes they'll do that on purpose just to
On
challenge you.
I was just going to say on purpose. And I tell people sometimes they would be trying to make me close in the middle just so they could
Yeah.
reject me. So they wanted to see how I responded during that interview. Do I bounce back, or did I just like, oh, dang, I got defeated? You know what I mean? So I love that you touched on that. That's a great point to everybody that's listening. Again, you're not going to, that first one, you'll be very rare if you nail the first one and you get that job offer. That wasn't the case for me, not for you either. But
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
it's a great point that you make with that. So now that you've broken in, you're in medical device. Can you kind of give us, your journey so far, what it's been like, and maybe some things that you didn't expect? Because that's one thing I've mentioned on here. Everyone told me it was like drinking from a fire hose. Um, and then
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, no worries. And then I get in and I'm like, they were right. So I'd love to just hear your experience so far and maybe
Yeah.
tips to people once they eventually break in, what to kind of expect.
Sure. So, I mean, you never really completely grasp because so many things can happen until you're actually in it. Like, there's no average day. You'll plan for a day and then you'll have a cancellation. You'll have a last minute. You'll have someone who calls you who's saying, "Hey, we need you at the hospital right now. We forgot to let you know." So you got to prioritize. And a lot of it, as far as what surprised me the most, was sometimes you'll be in situations where there is no good route. If something's, for example, if you have to break hard news to a doctor in the middle of a case, like say something's going wrong or they have to replace some disposables that you're using, you have a choice. You can either cross your fingers and hope that if it's going to go well, or you can tell the doctor, hey, let's replace these disposables. It looks like it was set up wrong. So you'll be put in situations where it's a lose-lose, and you have to prioritize which is more important. And it's always going to be the leaning in the care of the patient. So
Yep.
like I said, I've been in that situation where I've had to stop the procedure and say, hey, just to be sure, let's go ahead and reset up the equipment. I don't want to hope that it goes well. Whereas a more shy person would, not be able to do that. So you'll be put in situations where there's no good answer, and they're looking for someone who can think on their feet
Yep.
and they can trust. Because me, as being an ASR, my TM, when I'm there, like, he trusts me. He doesn't need to call me and ask me how it went. I can give him notes, but you're really, it's just a lot of weight, and you'll feel it too. If something doesn't go right, you'll take it really personally, like it's your fault, even if it's something that was completely out of your control and maybe even someone else's fault. You'll just take that if the case doesn't go well. So it's hard to manage those as well, just the
Yeah.
psychological toll.
100%, man. Yeah, and that's, we're in the same boat of me being new as well, and that's, I tell people that all the time. They talk about the stress, and it's a different kind of stress, right? Like, it might not be this giant thing, but it does weigh on you if something doesn't go as well as you wished. You're playing it back in your head as you leave, and you're like, dang. So there is that to be said. But I do want to touch on real quick, just because we haven't had many associate sales rep on here. Can you kind of tell what the duties are of an associate sales rep? And then also kind of touch on just back on that interview process of, like, what would you say for specifically for the associate? Because I always tell people it's a little different than if you were going for like a territory manager role or a full line sales rep. So I would love to just hear your advice on
Yeah.
that.
So the first tricky question I would say that they're going to ask you for an associate sales rep is, um, are you looking to progress, and how fast? So it's a double-edged sword. They want to hear that you're hungry and that you want to go through the process and progress, but they also don't want to get the impression that you're going to be bored within the first 2 months just doing support and that you're going to leave. So you kind of have to talk on both sides of your mouth and answer, hey, listen, I want to progress. I'm going to keep learning. But I also understand it's a 2-year process. I'm not going to, and I understand you're not going to put me into something I'm not ready for, but I'm always hungry. So that's the hardest answer, because if you answer either way, you're wrong almost. You kind of got to balance that tightrope. And as far as my day to day, it is a lot of support. You're always selling, though. You're always selling. So every case you're selling it. So even if the doctor has, or the hospital or clinic, whatever your product is, has invested in your product, there's always a competitor knocking at the door, trying to get case coverage, trying to get in. So every single case is a sale.
Yep.
So you have to, and a big thing is controlling the narrative, right? So if your case goes wrong, you don't know what the nurse is thinking. You don't know what the doctor's thinking, what the scrub tech is thinking, what the residents are thinking, because it could honestly be one of them made a mistake and the case is going wrong, but the rest of them didn't catch that. So you have to kind of have like a huddle at the end of the case, say, hey, this is what happened. This is why it happened. And that's honestly selling. So just keeping, even though you're not physically selling it, is just making sure everyone's happy.
I love that. Keeping that
Yeah. And then
relationship.
exactly. And then as far as I mean, they want salespeople in the associate role. You're going to get pushback. If you don't have sales experience, they're going to say, why should I hire you? You don't have a sales experience. If you don't have a LAR experience, whatever you don't have, they're going to bring up and push. They just want to see how you react. So don't let that get you down. A big thing I did was made them comfortable by doing what you can do to set yourself apart. Is every single product that, like, you're going to know which product you're going to be selling when you're interviewing. Know the product, know the competitors, but also go on Google Scholar and look up some clinical papers. Every single person selling knows, like, in the back of their mind, the 4, 5, or 6 papers that show the clinical studies that show why their product is superior. So if you even just bring up 1 or 2 of those studies, it becomes less of an interview and more like you catch them off guard almost. They're like, wow, how did you know that? You looked that up. How do you think about that? And it's an open discussion, because we even bring up our our papers that show we're clinically better, and we'll bring them up and as a discussion to doctors,
Yep.
because you'll learn in research, nothing is set in stone. This is what this paper says. This is what that paper says. It becomes a discussion. So if you can bring that up and show you went the extra mile, it just becomes a conversation and less of an interview. So that's what really helped me out.
I love that, man. That's great. That's great advice. We haven't had anyone say that here. So if you guys are listening, again, take that advice and just think about this. Is one thing I always like to put on there is like, when you do that, you're thinking outside the box, especially in the interview. And that just shows that you went beyond the extra mile, thinking outside the box to now set yourself apart in that interview process.
Oh yeah, and you've always got, because like I said, there's no average day, and they want to hear if you have sales experience, if you have uh, whether it be real estate, your own business, selling yourself. They want to hear creative ways that you've gotten what you've wanted, and that's what I brought in the interview as well. At ADP, I had to find creative ways, whether it was leveraging my relationships,
Mm-hmm.
you know, calling, setting up meetings a certain way. Just as soon as you get a no, you want to turn it into a yes, and that's what they want to hear is creativity, because there's not an as easy way from A to B. There's 1,000 ways to do it, and they just want you to be creative.
I love that, man. I love that so much. And real quick, before we jump into that next question, the one thing I did want to touch on that you brought into the interview process that I didn't get to speak on to was that roller coaster, the roller coaster of the interview process, and how it's a roller coaster even in your day to day once you get the position. You know what I mean? And I just tell people that 6 months when I was trying to interview, trying to get a job, it's a roller coaster every single day. You know, it's like one day
Oh, yeah.
you made a right connection and you're like, oh, they got a lead, and then the next day they're like they're going with someone else. Your heart's crushed, and like you said, just anyone who's listening that's going through this process, just know it's a roller coaster. Find the positives. Remember why you're getting into this, why you want to be in this industry, because there's going to be days while you're working too. Like if you have a bad case, it's a roller coaster, right? It can
Yeah.
go up and down.
Yeah, but it's definitely all worth it at the end of the day.
Yes,
You
100%.
always want to keep interviewing, keep going. If you have your mind set to it, it's not if, it's when.
Yep.
Some people will get it in 3 months, some will take 2 or 3 years. And the big thing is ask for feedback. If you're going a year without getting the position, ask like, why didn't I get it, and then solve that issue. The reason the feedback I was getting was I was a little bit more quiet, so I had to make sure to be more outgoing, talk more, and kind of engage a lot more, as far as the interview. So ask for feedback. Always ask for feedback, and then fix that, and then carry that with you into the next interview.
I love it, man. Adapt and adjust and make it
Sure.
happen. That's awesome. And Vail, want to just go into, you know, if you can give advice to anybody that's listening to right now, a lot of the people are people trying to break in. Would just love to hear your advice that you give to someone trying to break in, whether they have sales experience or if they don't, if there's something common there, or if you even want to break it up into two pieces. Would just love to hear what you would have to say to those people.
Um, yeah, so just do, I guess, do everything. If it could be one thing, I would say know yourself, know your strengths and your weaknesses. Like I said, my weakness, I mean, I had the sales numbers. So know your strengths, play off your strengths, kind of lead the conversation to your strengths. But also know your weaknesses. If they catch you off guard on something, they're going to just hammer on that. It doesn't matter what, I mean, numbers you put up in your last job, or how good you think you are, or how smart you think you are. So know your weaknesses and just kind of study up, and then find out what works for you. What worked for me was just religiously studying the product. A lot of it didn't make sense because you're just going to read, and nothing's going to make sense when you're researching, because medical device companies put out such little information, and it's so hard to find. So piece together what you can. You're not going to understand any of it. When you're going through the process, you're going to know what you're going to be selling. And then when you're reaching out, bring that to the conversation. So with the product that I was with, I did just that. I looked it up. Nothing was making sense. There was terms I didn't know. And I wasn't going to get that from keep reading, because it's just a lot of buzzwords. I wrote down as much as I could. And then I started reaching out and took that and kept reaching out and formed those relationships. So instead of the normal conversation of, hey, I want to break into medical device sales. This is my sales experience. This is why I want to do it. It was right into, hey, this is relevant to this product in this industry. What do you think about this? Or how did you overcome this or that? And just go down the list of what do they mean? I'm looking up the product. What does it mean by this? Because it's so hard to find information online. Use the people as a resource. They're going to tell you. You'll learn more in 5 minutes of speaking to someone that is in the position you want to be than you will hours of researching online. Because it's not a lot of information is out there.
I'm so glad you said that, man. Again, I said that on the last interview or the last podcast, but what you just
Yeah.
said, people listen to is like, you're going to learn whenever there was a job opening, I found out what the job position was and if I was interviewing for it, and I added every single human being that was in that job position, and then I reached
Yeah.
out to them because, like you just said, they're going to give you the cheat sheet is what I tell people. They're going to tell you, like, for example, you could have 6 products in your bag and they might be like, hey, these 2 products are great and these 4 suck, but we're always going to focus on these 2, right? They're going to just give you, hey, then talk about these 2 in your interview, talk about why they're great. And then also I always love the pros, the cons, each division's different, each company's different, each one's ran differently. So you guys are able to get that cheat sheet right away when you're talking to someone in the position, and they can give you their honest feedback compared to, reading something you might not totally understand if you're on the website.
Yeah, and that's I mean it's written so where like you have to be a clinician or well versed to understand. So lean on people and like you said, reach out to everyone. That's what I did. Um, if anyone ever gets you pushback, that's not normal. If they'll either ignore you because they're so busy, or they'll be excited to help you out. You don't ever feel like you're bothering anyone. Reach out to everyone, but then also think like if you don't want to be bothering them, don't bother them with just useless things like, hey, this is what the manager said. Do you think I got the job? It's like, no, hey, I found this piece of information. What do you think about something engaging? Something people love talking about their job, something to get them excited. So if people can remember that they were excited and they were impressed by you, they're just going to remember that. They're not going to remember what you said. They're going to remember how they felt when they spoke to you.
I
So
love that, man.
so
That
that you'll
is
never be bothering someone with useful information and engaging conversation.
That's awesome. That's great advice. I love that you said that. And then, like you said, people are going to remember how they feel. And then also, if you can get that, we always would just talk about is if you can get them talking about themselves or talking about their job, because like we said, people
Yeah,
love their job and like helping people. But if you can ask good questions to get them talking, they're going to remember that compared to if you call them and just talk about yourself for 30 minutes trying to tell them why you should be in
exactly.
medical device sales.
Exactly. And open-ended questions are great. If you can get the person not rambling, but just extrapolating, because they'll just drop so much knowledge that you're gonna have to try to write down it because it's there every day. They don't think, oh, I'm gonna tell them this nugget of information or this nugget of information. If you can just get them talking casually, you'll get the information out of them.
I love that. Well, Vail, thank you so much, man, for jumping on today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And also just all the nuggets you just dropped to our
Sure.
listeners. Everybody, if you were listening, please go back, re-listen to it, and write down some of those things that Vail said, because I promise you, those were nuggets that you're not going to hear anyone else saying. He dropped a lot of truth right there. So, Vail,
Yeah.
thanks again for being on, and I appreciate you making this work with your busy schedule.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Good luck.
I appreciate it. We'll see you guys on the next one. And if you guys haven't, please press that like and subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. If you guys are on the podcast, please leave a 5-star review so we can help reach more people and get them in this great industry. Thanks.